Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nearly 15 years ago, a group of Albertans were tasked with looking at an Alberta Pension Plan at the request of Premier Klein. That committee noted the big problem of Alberta assuming its share of unfunded liabilities from the Canada Pension Plan. It was $60 billion back then, Mr. Speaker. Fast forward, and this Premier's Fair Deal panel neglected to tell Albertans that the Finance Ministry's expert analysis already showed that the unfunded liabilities now amount to a staggering $133.1 billion. To the Premier, why won't you acknowledge there is a massive financial risk to Albertans if you pull us out of the Canada Pension Plan?
Honourable the Premier.
Regrettably, the NDP is once more emphasizing their economic illiteracy. I would point them to the comments made by one of the most prominent economists in Alberta, Professor Toom, who yesterday said, quotes, I'll be blunt here, there's no such thing as a $133 billion unfunded liability the way some, the NDP, are currently claiming. It's just silly. An Alberta Pension Plan is a debatable proposition. We agree. There are points in favour, points against. Let's debate those points sensibly. That's exactly what this government intends to do, and ultimately to allow Albertans, and not the NDP, to have the final say.
The honourable member for Edmonton-Millwoods.
Mr. Speaker, I would hope that this Premier would be an expert in how Alberta budgeting works. And here in Alberta, we have consolidated budgets. If we pull out of the CPP, $133.1 billion liability will sit on our province's balance sheet, while the Premier creates his pension plan. A plan where he will decide the contribution rates, he will dictate where the money is invested, he will determine the value of the pension payouts. Albertans do not want this Premier's hands anywhere near their CPP, and the polling shows it. To the Premier, why are you dead set on an agenda that assumes this liability while the vast majority of Albertans are opposed?
The Honourable the Premier.
So we can see what is taking shape here, Mr. Speaker. It's another effort by the NDP to mislead Albertans with profoundly deceptive fake facts. And as Professor Toom points out, that notional liability would only exist if no one pays a dime in premiums in the future. But, Mr. Speaker, here's the deal. What they think is this, that Quebecers are smart enough to manage their own pension, that Mr. Trudeau is smart enough to manage it on Bay Street, but that we Albertans aren't smart enough to manage our own pensions right here in Edmonton. I think Albertans fundamentally disagree. We have a lot more confidence in the financial capacity of Alberta.
The honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, if the Premier is so confident of his facts, why does he refuse to share them with Albertans? Huge unfunded liabilities moved to our provincial books, no guarantees for Albertans on their retirement security, leaving investment decisions up to the whims of the Premier. Albertans can smell a bad deal a mile away. To the Premier, why are you not sharing details with Albertans? Why did you not provide this information through the Fair Deal process? And why wouldn't you tell people about the Finance Department being convinced we can't even do this without the approval of other provinces?
Hear, hear. The Honourable the Premier.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, we trust Albertans so much that we are going to provide them with an exhaustive study on the cost, benefits, and structure of a potential pension plan, and to entrust them with the final decision. Secondly, none of these investments would be made at the whim of this or any other Premier, but independently, much like is done by the Caisse de dépôt of Quebec and by the CPP Investment Board. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the notion that this is going to cost Albertans is absurd. We have the youngest population in the country. If Albertans decide to go in this direction, it will mean either higher pension benefits on lower taxes or both.